Welcome back, and my guests are Busisiwe Mavuso as well as Iraj Abedien. We're discussing the challenges that President Cyril Ramaphosa, his presumed president anyway, will have to deal with as soon as he's inaugurated and he forms his government. The challenges are there, they speak for themselves, and we explored the whole question of the SOEs and what to do with them and the high debt burden that the nation faces at this time. You were still talking about the prescribed assets, that we have to have a discussion on that. What are the issues for you around that?
So I don't agree with the whole notion of prescribed assets. And I think the reason that is being given that, but at some point this National Party government introduced prescribed assets. But you see, the conditions and the environment and the reason why we're introducing it now, it's for completely different reasons. You see, you can't embark on this industrial scale looting that you have been doing as this ANC government for the past 10 years and then realize now that the economy is in this crisis and think that you're going to take people's pension money, and solve the problem with it. That is not the solution. The solution is really going to have to say, where have we gone wrong and how do we fix it? Because I think this is really putting plaster on the wound. They are not dealing with the problem, and I think, for the reasons that it's going to be implemented, and I think there isn't even a guarantee that we're actually going to get the returns that we want. So can you imagine with Eskom sitting where...
But here's the thing, though. The idea is brilliant. You were talking about allowing free flow of ideas, intellectual engagement, that it was discouraged in the past. Now, Iraj, I want to hear your views, because ultimately we learn now that the personalities do count, right? It depends on the personality of the person who occupies this powerful position of president of South Africa. Is Cyril Ramaphosa the right person to consider some of the things that Busisiwe here is sharing with us?
I have no doubt that at the moment, all considered, President Ramaphosa is the best son of the nation that we could put in charge of that office. That is based on what I've known him for 25 years and what he has done and the way he has done it. So I think, having said that, one president, as important as it is not going to deal with the mammoth job that he has to deal with. Therefore, I have been arguing, and many others, that we got to see the task as a national objective. The private sector has to come in the party, not with hand-waving and issuing statements and giving CSI donations, stuff like that. The job is much bigger than that. We need to rethink the way the businesses are run. We need to think the way some of the issues of the nation, be it education, be it public health, be it infrastructure in our cities, be it energy,
public safety,
be it water. I mean, as we sit here, the 80-odd% of skills is in the hands of the private sector. Now, whether they are rightists, leftists, centrists, quite frankly, is irrelevant. The skills are there, the resources are there, financial resources. We cannot use our national savings the way that we've been using it for the past, let's say, 50 years. We got to rethink that. We got to say it's national pool of savings, which is given to asset managers who are squandering it in billions. We talk about public sector capture. Quite frankly, if we analyze what is happening to the national savings and the way the like of Steinhoff and EOH and many others destroy 100 billion at a time, 150 billion at a time. Whose money is this?
And, private investors, individual.
No, it's pension fund. It's the 17 billion of it was Public Investment Commission, which is public pension of the teachers and the nurses who are, and we can unpack it. If we unpack who is paying for this misjudgment and the squandering of resources, at the end of it, very few billionaires have lost money. Very few.
It's the working to the ordinary people
back
once
to
again.
the pension funds. Now, if we got to have a discussion and say we can't create poverty there, mining sector the same. The way they use water, the way they treat workers, the way they do not take care of them. What happens? The worker retires, age 55, 60, suddenly they are poor. Who must take care of them?
The state? No, the people.
State. Suddenly their liability becomes state's liability. We have over 140,000 mining sites as we sit here that nobody knows who belongs to. They become a liability to the nation. People took the profit. What did they left behind?
They did not rehabilitate those.
Exactly. They call it ownerless and derelict mines. Now, private sector cannot continue this type of way and leave the liability for the national government and then turn to the government and say, oh, your debt is going up. But my debt is going up because I've got 18 million people every month that I've got to pay them. And how many of those millions are left who used to have jobs in the private sector?
But there's not been a change of mindset in that regard. I'm wondering, where would one start then? I mean, you can give the broad idea, and then I would like to hear your input on that. Where would you start? I mean, you change a mindset, an approach that's been in existence for 5 decades or more, and then you want something new in its place. What would you put in its place then, that approach?
Well, you have a public discussion around it with all the private sector guys, sector by sector. Because the private sector is not a homogeneous sector. You say agriculture, what are the issues and how do we deal with that? Banking sector, asset management, insurance, mining, etc., etc. And this doesn't have to be years and years. These are weeks, days. We haven't got time.
And in NEDLEC, I mean, we've always had NEDLEC. One would have thought that it would have made those inputs all along. What happened to it anyway, NEDLEC? You know?
NEDLEC still exists, but I think it's not functioning optimally. So a lot is going to have to be done. I don't know whether in the restructuring of NEDLEC, but I think in the capacitation of NEDLEC as well. And I think those are the issues that NEDLEC is currently grappling with. As you know, they don't have a CEO, they don't have a CFO. I think those, it's got something to do with fraudulent activities, you know, that these two embarked upon. Everyone is acting at NEDLEC at the moment, so I think you can't expect...
I want to move the discussion then to the small, medium-sized enterprises. That somehow that sector has not been given a fair share and the support on the part of the government.
It absolutely hasn't been, and I think the high regulation, you know, is actually a big issue for SMMEs, but also just how we are structured as an economy, you know, which is characterized by oligopolies, you know, almost in every, you know, industry. We need to look at that and say, how do we allow the participation, you know, and how do we reduce the barriers to entry so that there is more, you know, entrants that are going to come into the different industries? Because once you do that again, you know, you create competition, and once you've got competition, Tim, then, you know, it forces the prices down. And once the prices are down, you know, it allows for more affordability. And once you have more affordability, consumer spending might increase, and if consumer spending increases, you know, then you've got more demand for products, and if there's more demand for products, then factories are actually going to have to produce more. If they need to produce more, then they need to hire more. If they need to hire more, then again you start dealing with the unemployment issue and so forth and so forth. But you see, at a regulatory level and at a policy level, it's really the environment is going to have to be conducive, you know, to allow small participants and players to actually come into the frame.
Well, South Africans have been despondent for some time, and I think the expectation out of the outcome of this election and the fact that Cyril Ramaphosa is now going to be confirmed and inaugurated as president of the country gives them some optimism. But people need much more than optimism. The unemployment rate is definitely too high for a democratic state. It's amazing that we're still functioning as one up to this point. Are there any short-term things that can be done almost immediately that, you know, can show that this new government means business and will bring about the changes necessary?
My view is that yes, this economy, as much as it's been drained and hollowed out because of poor governance and stuff that we all know, it's got lots of potentials. Its national endowment is very diversified, it's very, very rich and robust. That's why we're still standing, so to speak. So my view is that instead of talking about SMEs, as an example, or unemployment, we need to break it down. Stop talking at a high level. What are the opportunities of SMEs in this sector? Who is going to press which button? We can't talk about SMEs and in the public sector and in the private sector. And I'm on the receiving end of it. I can show you that even now, after all the commitments, none of them pays the invoices in time. And the bigger the corporation, the bigger they bully the
small players.
And who suffers? They go out of business. They cannot. Government departments, the same. At some point a few years ago, we did a back-of-envelope analysis that over 140,000 SMEs had gone out of business because they weren't paid in time.
And not only businesses, but people's personal lives were damaged, affected by that,
So instead of talking about all these symptoms that we have, we need to say, okay, this is a new dawn, let's reboot, and per sector, Not a minister deciding, I'm the minister of SMEs and I've got bodyguards and I've got another car. That's nonsense. In agriculture, who are the key players? What are the opportunities for the entry and support for the next 5 years of SMEs?
Well, I want to quickly throw in this question as we end the interview, because we're talking about President Cyril Ramaphosa, the individual. He's a member of a political party. There are tensions in the party, and there are specific issues to be dealt with, including dealing with corruption. Individuals have been mentioned, and you can imagine the environment that he's operating in. Will he be able to navigate that, you think? What is it that will show that indeed he's capable of dealing with those tensions?
I think, in my view, first of all, the appointment of the cabinet that he's going to have to do immediately after being inaugurated as president, or before, I'm not sure, is really going to have to be very telling. I think he's really going to have to ensure that it brings leadership, that a finance minister, for instance, that knows the difference between income and cash. People, with skills, people with capability. And secondly, I think he has already started with the corruption issues, the commission of inquiries that are there. But you see, talking for the sake of talking is not going to get us anywhere. I think we need to see a litigation or two, that is actually going to come out of these commissions. And I think, what it did with the NPA, absolutely.
And Iraj, final word to you?
I believe the same, but except more specifically, I believe there are some very good candidates in the private sector, CEOs and chairmen who should end up in jail, and there are very good high-profile political leaders who should join them in the jail, so that you and I as a citizen and our children can see things have changed. If we want to pussyfoot around these issues, and if we want to keep talking and not acting, we're going to lose credibility very quickly.
And of course, that loss of credibility is going to affect any other part of the stuff that we spoke about here. So action is what is needed. That's my takeaway from this conversation. And Busi, thank you very much. Iraj, much appreciated.
Thank you.
And those are my guests. So we had a very interesting engagement on what President Cyril Ramaphosa should deal with almost immediately as soon as he assumes his responsibilities as the leader of this nation. After the break, we'll be taking our focus to political party marketing campaigns and poll predictions.